Certainly not. The mullahs are masters of deception and duplicity. They're charlatans. For this reason, they simply cannot be trusted. You know full well that Rouhani himself acknowledged during the election campaign that he had deceived the West in order to continue the nuclear activities inside Iran, while the West was being misled that the regime has engaged negotiations to halt their nuclear program. They are not to be trusted. It's common knowledge that the regime pursues nuclear weapons to guarantee its survival. For this reason, even if they come to negotiate, it is because of international pressure. The chaotic situation inside the country is also an issue because of dire economic conditions and social pressure. What is important now is that the West, the P5+1, extract more concessions from the regime. The regime is negotiating because of pressure of the sanctions and the pressure brewing within Iranian society. Regrettably, the West is not stepping up.
The Security Council has 6 times demanded that UN stop uranium enrichment, yet the interim agreement apparently permits Tehran to maintain some enrichment. Is that acceptable to you? And if not, what are your concerns?
In my view, no. I believe any such possibility left at the hands of the mullahs paves the way for them to quickly obtain what they want when they choose. For this reason, I said that it's imperative that Security Council resolutions are implemented fully. If not, any concessions to the mullahs will no doubt enable them to find a way to cheat, to secretly continue activities to reach the nuclear bomb. And that is unacceptable.
What is your view, and what do you think Iran is trying to do now strategically? You see what is happening with Prime Minister al-Maliki and ISIS. Is Iran trying to extend their influence through Assad, Syria, and establish this or fight against this? What is your view of that?
You know that in reality, the Iranian regime's strategy has been to expand in the region, to spread fundamentalism and to export terrorism. And this will remain as long as it's in power. This dictatorial medieval regime lacks the capacity to solve problems inside the country. So one of the regime's strategic pillars is the export of terrorism and fundamentalism. Many regime officials have stated openly that Syria and Iraq represent strategic depth for the regime. Therefore, the focal point of what is happening in Syria and Iraq is Tehran.
What would you like the American people to know? Can the U.S. government change its political strategy? And how can the average American understand what your supporters have gone through, what the people of Iran are now going through, having the history of the United States supporting many resistance movements? And I can only think of World War II against Nazi Germany. What can the American people do?
First, the Iranian people do not want religious dictatorship. Second, in Iran, there is a legitimate, widespread, and organized resistance with a long history, which is comprised of the best children of the Iranian people. We've paid a heavy price so far to stand up to the dictatorship, to expose its fundamentalism, its terrorism, its nuclear sites, its human rights abuses, and its warmongering around the world. I believe it is paramount that the international community stand with the Iranian people and the Iranian resistance dream of overthrowing the religious dictatorship and not stand on the side of the tyrants, a religious dictatorship, one which is now a threat to global peace and security. You know full well that the nuclear danger threatens not only the region but the world. Its meddling in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon threatens the whole region with war and conflict, which will have dire consequences. Therefore, what the Iranian people and resistance want is that the U.S. be at least neutral, because so far the U.S. has stood with the dictatorship and against the legitimate demands of the Iranian people, which is the overthrow of this regime and to create a republic based on the separation of religion and state, a government which would bring freedom and democracy, freedom of expression, and freedom in every sphere for the Iranian people. This is what we represent. An Iran which would welcome peace, friendship, compassion, mercy, love, progress, gender equality, an Iran in which all religions and all minorities would enjoy equal rights, an Iran based on international norms and law. I believe the Iranian people deserve to have such a government, And as such, they have the right to stand up to the medieval religious dictatorship. And they expect, as you asked me, that Western countries, the U.S. government, to support the legitimate right of the Iranian people and their resistance to overthrow the regime. They must stand with the Iranian people and not with the dictators.
There have been many resistance movements through history. Some have worked and some have not. Yet no one would ever foresee that the Berlin Wall could have fallen. Are you confident at some point that the regime in Tehran will also fall?
I am confident that the mullah's religious dictatorship ruling Iran will not last and will be overthrown. It defies logic to expect this religious dictatorship, which is the founder of terrorism and fundamentalism in the region and is seeking nuclear weapons, to take international policy hostage. The Iranian people reject this regime. According to official internal assessments by the regime, more than 95% of Iranian people oppose them. The mullahs are engulfed in crisis, a crisis of legitimacy, crisis of leadership, resulting in a schism at the top of the regime, an economic crisis, the nuclear crisis, and the crisis in Syria and Iraq, which have also frightened and shaken the regime. And in the face of all this, there is a legitimate and powerful resistance with a popular base which can, with the help of the Iranian people, overthrow this regime. So by relying on these factors, I am confident that the resistance is taking the path to a free, prosperous, peaceful Iran, a bright and democratic Islam, the genuine Islam in the face of the reactionary and fundamentalist Islam. This is what the region and the Islamic world need. Right now, the region and the world is grappling with the danger of fundamentalism, and this danger is growing by the day. And its antidote is a cultural one. The Iranian resistance is the antithesis to the religious and fundamentalist dictatorship whose tentacles are spreading to Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, to the region and the Horn of Africa, and is challenging the international community. For this reason, I am very confident that when such a resistance, with such ideals, with such a platform, with the message of freedom and democracy, gender equality, a non-nuclear Iran in the face of a religious, fundamentalist regime exists, the regime will be overthrown, and I am confident that the Iranian people will experience freedom, democracy, and equality because they are worthy of it. And when that day comes, the region and the world will be more secure and will not have to deal with the cancer of extremism and fundamentalism incited by this regime. When its fountainhead dries up, this phenomenon will cease to exist. I believe that that day is an occasion for celebration, not only for the Iranian people, but for the people of the region who have suffered enormously and endured great hardship, the massacres in Syria and Iraq and elsewhere. It will be a celebration for the region and for the world, for being confident that global peace and security will prevail without a fundamentalist religious dictatorship that is after nuclear weapons. In terms of the resistance and whether it will succeed, history has shown that whenever a nation is resolved and is willing to pay the price of its decision, it will certainly succeed. My experience and that of the Iranian people tell us that when a nation decides to fight and pay the price for the rights it deserves, democracy, freedom, and equality emerge. When it decides to fight for these and pay the price for values which shine in history of all human societies and in the progress of human society, it will certainly achieve it. And I am confident that the Iranian resistance, which seeks the proven values of advanced societies, will reach its goal of a free, prosperous, democratic, just, and non-nuclear Iran. An Iran which would welcome peace, friendship, fraternity, and equality in the region and the world. This is what has inspired me and the members of the resistance, despite the very difficult conditions they endure wherever they are, especially the residents of Camp Liberty, who are besieged in extraordinarily dire circumstances, but continue to make every sacrifice with love and faith for Iran and its future.